All right, let's do it. So, taking our cue from Simon Sinek, let's start with why. Nathan, perhaps you can do this one for us. Why are we here? Why did we start this project? Why are we doing this?
So we get this question a lot, and for both of us, this is a personal story. It's a personal journey. And for me specifically, I grew up on a farm in Ohio, the corn belt of the U.S. And about 10 years ago, I took over the finances for my parents and realized that year over year, they were making less and less money while simultaneously the soil was becoming depleted. And with an engineering background, I thought, there has to be a technical solution to this. Yeah. It can't, this is too easy of a problem to be solved. And after digging in further, we realized that this is not only a problem in Ohio, but around the world. Agriculture, as we know, is completely broken. We're stuck in this negative feedback loop where
progressively
no one wins. The environment doesn't win.
Yeah.
Small farmers don't win. Yeah. And so in moving to Lisbon, I met you and we started talking about this problem, and this was common and for you as well.
Yeah, indeed. I'm also hailing from an agricultural family, and we'd seen the same struggle, depreciating returns every year on the same activity, requiring more and more inputs, more and more finances to going into the project every year, and squeezing that profit margin for farmers. We think all around the world.
Right, right. And it was around this time that we learned more about the Golden Visa program, right, and saw that kind of in similar ways, the Golden Visa program wasn't working as well, right, either. And so there was this common parallel path that we saw.
So I've been looking into that side of things before, because I was tinkering around in the real estate markets in London beforehand, and had half an eye on what was going on with that stuff. But really, it got super interesting for us when we realized how narrow the band of offerings were in the Golden Visa market. So we knew that there was a real estate offering, we knew that there were funds, and I think we both, being from entrepreneurial backgrounds, we both had assumed that there would be a breadth of these funds.
Right. Right.
And so it was a really interesting day when we discovered that there were no agriculture-focused funds. Yeah. Partially, and I don't want to resist the urge to split off into different conversations, but largely because farmland is such an incredibly stable asset, and we knew that Golden Visa seekers were seeking something stable, which real estate kind of used to be, before it got quite so overcooked. So yeah, that was our first draw to it. It was just that no one else was doing it. A huge gaping gap in the market.
Not only agriculture, but no one had a focus on the environment. And in today's world, where climate change is top of mind for everyone, we thought at least one other fund would be working on this.
I mean, I feel like we knew we were on, when we knew we were really onto something, when we started talking to people about it, and everybody's eyes just lit up and said, that's going to be great for the market, because it brings a sustainable aspect, it brings a diversification option for people who are otherwise focused on real estate.
Right.
So yeah, that was a big one for us, the whole no one else is doing anything. We also noticed that with regard to other impact funds, other impact investment opportunities, the returns that we would be able to offer in a fund like this would marry up pretty well with those returns. So another indication that we were playing on the right pitch there. And the third big one as to why do this project through Golden Visa was because we see that the Portuguese government is trying to funnel foreign direct investment more and more into the interior of Portugal, less and less on the coast. We know at the end of this year, they're shutting down real estate Golden Visa in Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve, three markets that have had an imbalanced amount of investment into them via the Golden Visa program, and the government is trying to put the brakes on that, redirect money to a part of the country that really needs it.
Right.
And we've been very pleasantly surprised by the number of politicians, both locally and on a national scale, who have got in touch to show their support for what we're doing.
Yeah,
it just matches up so well with that. So we feel like it's kind of future-proofed as well, where there's no regulation that's going to come in and trip us up on what we're doing, because the country's right behind us, which is a great feeling.
A win-win-win situation, which is definitely cool. Right. Yeah, actually, I remember months ago, we were digging into this and the word legacy came up, which is kind of interesting how this has grown, because when we talk to investors, many times it's not citizenship just for them, but they're looking to create opportunity for their children as well.
Yeah.
And for you and I, this project is also about creating an impact on the environment and the legacy this creates through investment.
Yeah.
And so really interesting.
Yeah,
We could go down
not just
some
through investment, but on the environment side too, right? So you're not only investing for passports for your children and grandchildren, but you're also investing for the environment, for the natural world, for your children and grandchildren as well, to enjoy it in the way that we have.
And you have a positive impact on the local people. You're investing in rural communities and improving the lives versus contrasting with some of these other investment options.
Yeah, great.
So, the why. We could probably spend hours and hours on that, but we can go deeper into that. So a lot of folks on this webinar, they want to know specifics.
Technicals.
So many questions are like, yeah. We love the story. We've read about golden visas, but I want some cold hard numbers. I want to know what your strategy is. Can you go into that a little bit?
Let's do it. Okay. So I heard this summarized really nicely last week when I was on the phone to a broker who's fast become my favorite broker. And he was talking about how he enjoys pitching our fund because he had a great quip, which escapes me now, but something along the lines of, put simply, Pela Terra Farmland is the simplest fund on the market. And what he means by that is that he doesn't get tied up explaining our strategy. We made it super simple deliberately, and we can dig into why the importance of the transparency and the importance of investors being able to see exactly where all of their money is going. But what he's talking about is this, our 4-step strategy, which is that we buy quality farmland, great analysts are at work on that with access to water. We install and modernize the infrastructure where it needs to be done. We, over a 3-year period, convert the land to certified organic, and then we lease it. Okay. So where's the income in that? So the income comes from the leasing, the most stable form of income imaginable. We're signing 25-year leases that will last far beyond the lifespan of the fund. So we're benefiting from a very, very predictable income that's coming in every year. And that's why we can target a 5% return to our investors at the end of each year.
I hate to interrupt you, but 25 years sounds extremely long to a lot of people. Why is that? Why did
I mean, if you're, for example, planting an almond orchard, an organic almond orchard, you can't be working with a 5 or 10-year lease because it takes 5 years to ramp that orchard up to full yields. So if no one's gonna put the effort in to develop that land if 1 or 2 years after you've just finished creating your cash cow, the rent doubles and you lose it. So instead we have this very predictable deal with our tenants, which takes into account the inflation and ticking up of the rent each year, but at a reasonable and predictable level, which means that we benefit from the security, they benefit from the security. And it's a great stable platform.
What you're saying is there's no real guesswork around this 5%. It's
right, exactly. So
it's in a contract.
We can project. So there's 2 things really. One is being able to project so clearly the income each year, and one is that we obviously hope it never gets to this, but it's great for us to have our income enshrined in a legal contract. So should anything go awry about that, we can take that to court. We hope we won't, because actually our tenants are our partners and we love working closely with them and making sure that their businesses thrive. But it's great. We get a question a lot about contractual guarantees and how do we know that the income's coming in? Well, there it is. It's all there in black and white on paper. So it works really well from our perspective too.
So I interrupted your flow, and I probably will continue doing this. Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's good.
So we leased the farmland out.
Yeah,
and then talk to me after that.
So I mean, in the steps, how do we make sure we do this well? So we need to make sure we buy well, we need to make sure we lease well, and we need to make sure that we sell well at the end. So this kind of breaks down into these 3 steps. So buying well and leasing well, actually, in this strategy, they're very much hand in glove. They work together, and the reason is we don't buy speculatively, hoping that we might then be able to lease that land out. what we do is we work very, very closely with the analysts from the tenants who are looking to lease land. So we're already forming a deal before we've actually found the plot. We search together, we analyze together. And when the land is purchased, they're part of that process. So the land is purchased and leased to them all in the same day.
Got it. That's pretty straightforward.
Super straightforward and just absolutely minimizing risk, because we don't have land on the books and then we go shopping around for tenants.
Right.
And there's no, all the negotiations been done beforehand. There's not money waiting around in the fund, waiting to be deployed, waiting to be exploited. It's all in the ground. It's kind of, I this metaphor that always goes around in my head, but the money is in the ground growing with the crops, right? So super simple stuff. So that's buying and leasing kind of work together. Now, actually, the three of them sort of work together, because those tenants, the so-called tenants, another reason that they're so involved in the buying process is because that's who's going to buy the land at the end of the fund, right? So we've talked about how much effort goes into developing the orchards, developing the farms, and these tenants, there is big organizations that we work with, and they want to take this land on themselves. So which does kind of raise the question, well, why don't they just buy it themselves in the first place?
Right.
So simple maths on that. If you've got a pot of money, you could spend half of it buying land and half of it developing that land, or you could spend almost all of it developing the land because you're just paying a small amount of money in rent each year. And then at the end, when your farm is yielding, your farm's kind of printing profits for you every year. You can then either go raise against that to buy the land, or maybe it's printing enough for you to buy the land yourself. So you end up with a farm that's twice as big as if you just bought the land yourself.
So it's a pretty cool situation.
It's pretty cool for them, and I think that's a big part of why there's so much demand.
Right.
We're fielding inquiries all the time from people who are wanting to rent our land, which is a really great position for us to be in, because it means we can do really thorough due diligence, really pick and choose who we want to work with, which is a part of how we uphold the sustainable side of things as well, because we're only working with growers who are moving, who are committing a large percentage of their farm to organic, or genuinely interested in examining soil health and how they can update their operations to be more in line with 21st century agriculture.
And it also maximizes the safety of the investment too. Like if you have the renters buying the land with us, or finding the land, sourcing, and then committed to renting it, and then committed to buying it. Wow. Yeah, that's
great. The whole thing just follows along the track for the entire lifespan of the fund. Now,
what can you talk about the process when the land is sold at the end?
Sure. So well, the land can be, there's nothing that says that the land has to actually be sold at the end of the fund. It could be that because we're on such a fixed track of progression, the tenant approaches us early and says, hey, we'd like to do a deal now. And obviously that would be a decision that was made by the fund manager and in conjunction with the participation unit holders, who would get to vote on these things at the end of each year. But if the numbers are right, it's great for us to be able to liquidate something early, just because it's a great sign to the investors to show that what we said was going to happen is happening. That said, there are market decisions around that, because if we feel that by holding it another couple of years we can get a better price, that's where the investment expertise comes in.
Cool.
So we also, another fun fact here is that already at such an early stage in the fund, we're already fielding calls from pension funds, because these assets, several hundred hectares of already yielding farmland, already tenanted with, let's say, another 18, 20 years left on the tenancy, that's every family office and pension funds, ideal investment. We love it. Predictable income every year, reasonable market value. They know farmland's going up in Portugal. They know farmland costs 20% less in Portugal than it does in Spain. That's why it's so undervalued, such a great investment. So we have this very strong plan A, which we're hoping will execute, because we like the idea of the continuity of the tenant than buying it, and that works really well for us. But we have this very strong safety net, this great plan B, which is that long-term investors are biting our hands off to get into these investments as well. So that's how we get to the buy well, lease well, sell well. So
it sounds simple, and it's funny. I'm on a lot of calls with investors, and I explain just this, and then there's a pause, and I think folks are ready for, and then you do this, and then you do this, but it's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, when it's done well, it's Portugal's coming from the US and the UK, you know,
Yeah.
we talk about this a lot. Portugal is a place where you have to do business in the way the Portuguese do business, right? You can't come here with your British mind and your American mind and say, well, this is how it would work in the UK. So this, you know, in Portugal, the markets are somewhat less transparent, and you have to know people to get good deals, pretty much. I mean, unless you have great luck, which can happen. But fundamentally, the reason it's so simple is because we're positioned well. We've spent our years growing our network. We spent our years getting our key players in place. And that's why we're hearing about great deals on land that are simply not available to the public. So they go out to a small number of people. And as for why, that's a question with a long answer.
Maybe take one second, because this was a shock for me in moving to Portugal. In the US, every property is listed on Zillow. And you just one click, you can see it, the whole world sees it, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So that's not like that here in Portugal.
It's not like that here in Portugal. There are higher barriers to entry, essentially. And this is why, you know, we can only really theorize about this. We can only use our economics education to try and form theories about this. But this is one of the big reasons why farmland is cheaper in Portugal than it is in Spain, or so we think, because the market's simply not as transparent. You don't have as many bidders on each piece of land. And that's because owners, well, one of the reasons is because owners don't want to publicize to the world that they're selling their assets. There's this very culturally nuanced sensitivity around that. And you know, we're not going to dig into that cultural stuff because that's we might get it wrong anyway. But the fact is the markets here just are not as efficient. Great for us, means we can capitalize on beautiful land at way undervalued. And in 5 to 7 years, that might be quite different, and we know the right people to sell it to anyway. So we're really able to have a bite from both halves of the cherry there, which is great for us.
When we first started looking at land, I was shocked when someone said the majority of deals are all private deals.
Yeah,
and it blew my mind. Yeah. It emphasizes a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So that's the ins and outs of the fund and how we work. And we can already see some questions coming in. That's great. Please do keep them coming. We're going to do a section on the golden visa market in general, and then at the end we're going to tackle all these questions that are flooding in. But please do keep them coming in the meantime, and we'll wait and come back to them. So let's do the market.
Yeah, you want
so we know that probably folks on the webinar have done their research and know a lot of stuff about this, but also we speak to people often who have read something and half get it or think they get it. So slightly, you know. So let's use the expertise we built up to just quickly run through the key points, clarify a bunch of stuff.
Rapid fire common questions.
So let me start. Okay, Nathan, what is a golden visa?
The golden visa is the most flexible way to get a Portuguese citizenship. Why is it flexible? Is one, you're only required to live in Portugal for 7 days out of the year. And so if you are running a business at home and you need to keep doing that, but you want to create an option to, in the future sometime, move to Portugal or gain the citizenship, it is the right thing.
So 1 enforced holiday per year.
Yeah, come on. How's that bad? Right?
Could be worse, could be worse. What's up next?
Okay, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Is the golden visa right for you?
Okay, great question. So where's this question come from? The reason we put this on the list, we end up speaking to a lot of investors who think they want a golden visa.
Because it sounds cool.
Because it sounds cool, and maybe their friends have done it, and et cetera, et cetera. But in reality, there are cheaper ways of doing it. And it's all about investor profile. Do you fit into the golden visa profile, or do you fit in some other profile? So we have these other visas such as D2, D7, and essentially the main split between them is that if you want to move to Portugal now or in the very near future, you don't need to invest in a golden visa. Now, it seems like a strange thing for us to be saying because we are at the end of the day promoting our golden visa fund, and that's what we do. But we're not, you know, we agreed very early on that we didn't want to be hard sellers trying to convince people that this was the right thing to do. We really only want to make sure that we're only working with people for whom this is the perfect fit. So if you are thinking of moving to Portugal, let's say this year, you really don't need to be outlaying all this cash for a golden visa.
But there's one main difference between the golden visa and this other visa option. It's you have to live in Portugal for 6 consecutive months a year.
out of each year.
And so you have to be ready to move.
To actually move.
Right.
Yeah.
Which for some people that fits really perfect with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Others,
Yeah.
they need more flexibility.
So we end up diverting a lot of investors down one of the other routes, which is a shame. So it's always sad to see them go, but it's also nice to know that you set them off on the path that was right for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Great. Okay. I've got one.
Okay.
I know I just asked you one, but
that's okay.
This is maybe for both of us. Portugal. The Portuguese love asking us this too.
Yeah, the Portuguese do love asking, why did you move it? Yeah. So let me start this off by saying, how often do you and I, when we're doing our work, just look at each other and think, like, how good is this? Yeah. So Portugal, why Portugal? I actually wrote a list because I knew I was going to forget some things. So let me just read this list.
Way more prepared.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Weather.
Okay.
Cost of living.
Yeah.
Tax advantages.
Yeah.
Let's come back to that.
Okay.
Work-life balance. Safety. Third safest country in the whole world. English speaking.
Yeah.
Schengen zone. Once you've got your passport, every border in Europe essentially dissolves, and you can go live, work, do anything you want in any Schengen zone country. Technology hub.
Yeah.
EU, protecting your freedoms, live, work, travel, blah, 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 blah. Politically and economically stable, fair investment environment, level playing field.
Yeah.
Bam, 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 bam.
So, I had a talk with a friend lately, and before moving here, I had heard that Portugal was more technology focused and kind of up and coming, but it didn't really click. And almost, I would say, maybe you should answer as well, but most of my friends here that are people I've met are entrepreneurs of some kind.
Right. Such a community.
And I came from San Francisco.
Right.
And that was shocking. So I just wanted to.
No, I love it. There's so much happening. There's so much bubbling in Portugal. It really is. It's an incredibly fertile ground for new ideas, new developments. And part of that is, I think, because a lot of people who come from these hubs, like London and San Francisco and other similar places, are kind of done with that lifestyle. People want to keep working on either their startups, their scale-ups, their various life projects, but they don't really want to live in the grind of London anymore. So they come here, and because a lot of people have done the same thing, now there's this great kind of greater than the sum of its parts community of people doing that kind of thing. So, and this is really across all ages as well. Meet people all the time from different age groups who are working on super exciting stuff. So it's just a delight for us to live here.
I want to come back to one thing that you had on your
that was really rapid.
100 item list. You brought up the taxes. And
let's do taxes.
Yeah. So maybe dive into some of those.
Okay, so let's do this on a personal level and on a fund level too. So let's start at the top and go down. So this investment fund, profits, taxes on our profit, 0%. As an investor, when you extract your profits, 0% tax here in Portugal.
And is that true on any investment, or why is it 0%?
No, this is, so we can really only theorize as to the government policy that went into structuring these funds this way. My personal opinion is that they had a lot of interest in the real estate side of Golden Visa, but as the market grew, the taxes alongside it grew as well, and now you're paying a whopping stamp duty when you buy a place. You're paying whopping capital gains tax at the end. You're paying 28% on the rental income you receive. The private market has kind of copied that model, crazy commissions, crazy sales agency tax. So much so that we did some sums recently, and on a model where you buy at 500 to get your Golden Visa, and you're making 5% yield from your flat, typically to short-term lets, 5% yield per year equates to 0 profit.
The taxes are that high, and all the fees
and the commissions. It's a lot to do with private commissions.
Wow.
Whereas when you, and also of course that's running it through the Golden Visa model, so that's paying some immigration agency fees.
Got it.
When you're doing the same thing through a fund, you can't get away from the immigration agency fees. That's the same across both markets. And we have a fund manager fee, 0.95% per year. But in our fund, you're taking home 4.06%. As long as we hit our target returns. Wow. So it's just a world away, the two worlds. And I think that's because the government could see that the real estate world it's just overdone. It's been overdone. It's been overtaxed. It's being over commissioned.
Right.
And I think they wanted something of a clean slate when they started this fund side of things.
Got it. That's interesting. Yeah.
So that's the taxes on the fund side. Why don't you tell us about NHR and pension taxes and things as well?
Yeah, I think you might have some more details on this than I. But NHR, non-habitual resident.
Yeah.
Anyone who fits in within certain categories, and retirees.
So yeah, retirees is a little different. We'll do that afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a fixed tax rate of 20%.
20% if you're making your money in Portugal, but if you're bringing your money in from outside Portugal, 0%.
If you're getting paid in dividends,
dividends in from outside Portugal are at 0%. So there's a lot of, and that lasts for 10 years. That's not forever.
Right.
So there's a lot of people here in that same community I was talking about earlier who have figured that out and are bringing in their money from the US, from the UK, from Germany, elsewhere, and doing that at 0%. For retirees, it used to be that you could draw down from your pension at 0%, and they've just put it up to 10%.
Okay.
That's still, I don't know, way less than it is in the UK. So it's kind of tax advantage after tax advantage after tax advantage. The Portuguese government have been very savvy about putting in foreign investment through these cuts. Anyhow, that's enough what we could do all day on why Portugal. So let's stop doing why Portugal. Okay, let's do why farmland in Portugal. Why is it such a good asset? So farmland in Portugal. I've touched on this before, but it's 20-25% as soon as you cross the border between Portugal and Spain. Spanish agriculture is somewhat more developed than Portugal. You typically see more high-tech infrastructure, which is part of why our play is to upgrade the infrastructure. And we also know that farmland, the EU has started to invest in infrastructure in Portugal in a big way. A great example of this is that Portugal has created Europe's largest man-made reservoir now. They've built a big dam and flooded a valley, quite dramatic style, about 7 years ago. And now that means that agriculture in that area, the infrastructure has just shot up through the roof because there's all this opportunity in that area of Portugal now. We're seeing projects like that popping up all over the country, which just means there's a ton of low-hanging fruit in terms of advantage to be taken. Now that differential between Spanish and Portuguese farmland, that's going to close over the next few years for sure.
I'm trying to remember this specific statistic, but it's like 70% of all farmers in Portugal are over 65 years old right now.
Right.
70%. And so what does that mean practically? It means that they're either going to pass the farms down to their kids, but all the kids are coming into the cities now. And so what we're seeing is a flood of farmland coming onto the market.
Yeah, and we hope that through some level of incubation and investment into those types of farms that we could have a tiny hand in changing that flow, encouraging younger generations to stay on their farms and ideally work with us and on exciting future projects. But what else? Volatility and market risk. So let's just finish up on this bit. So I read some fascinating stats recently about indexed across the market. Volatility of farmland as an asset class is around 6.3%, 6.2%, contrasted against real estate, which is about 18.3%.
Wow.
So even against our safe as houses real estate cousins, we're looking at an incredibly static asset in terms of the line that just ticks up and up and up each year. But farmland just doesn't boom and bust in the same way as real estate, especially in real estate markets where you're sucking in investment via schemes like Golden Visa, because you just get these pumps and dumps and these real waves, So that doesn't help with the volatility, but that's what gives us such a static base to be building on in this fund, is the fact that farmland just ticks up and up and up and up. And that's where I get back to my mental model of just kind of treating it like a safe. You sort of bury your money in there at the beginning of the fund, dig it up at the end, and great, there's more than there was, but it's just super safe, and that's why we love it. That's why we love it as the basis for our fund. Super exciting talking to people about it. Urgency. Why now?
Yeah. Another common conversation I have with folks.
Yeah.
January 1st next year, the Golden Visa program changes. Fundamentally. What does that mean for fund investment? Is that the minimum investment increases from 350,000 now up to 500,000.
The funds, right?
It's not an arbitrary rule that we came up with. It's a governmental change in policy. And so effectively what this means is like when you did your homework in high school, so many people wait to the last minute, and then everyone submits their application at the last minute, and you've seen bureaucracy here, and so when that happens, there's going to be significant
a little logjam. So, and a word to the wise as well. Portugal really slows down in December. So there's going to be we actually had we had a conversation the other day with a friend who's closer to the immigration agency here, and they are forecasting a huge flood of investors coming in Q4, and sort of talking about how there's this 6 to 8 week application period which you need to reach the end of to ensure that you get the stamp, and that says, okay, this is the date on which we officially acknowledge your application. And that's the one that makes the difference. If that comes on the 1st of January 2022, you're paying 500. If it comes on the 31st of December 2021, you're paying 350. So there's this overnight step up.
That's huge.
Because it takes a few weeks to reach that, and December's not a very active time in this wonderful country, it means that really Q4 becomes a bit of a red zone, if you like. A few sleepless nights if you haven't had your stamp yet. So the investors that I'm dealing with face to face each day, I'm saying, you really want to get this done in Q3. Got it. You know, if you want to sleep easy, that's the green zone, really.
Good. Glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I want to talk about one more thing, just because I had a real nitty-gritty conversation with some super interesting conversation with an investor in India about this morning, and I thought it'd be a great thing to cover, which is the sticky issue of guarantees in the market. Right. So we get this question quite a lot. How can we be guaranteed? Now, golden visas being a relatively young industry, it's just coming up to about a decade in age, back in the real estate days. And lots of sort of unscrupulous developers started writing guarantees, and how comfortable it is as an investor to receive a piece of paper that says, come rain or shine, whatever happens, we're going to pay you. Right? Yeah. Now, it's a bit of a race to the bottom on that. As soon as one developer starts offering it, of course, you don't want to be the developer that's not offering it compared to the next guy. So suddenly the market's awash with these paper guarantees. And then comes coronavirus. Everybody goes bust. Really sorry, sir, that guarantee is from a company that no longer exists. Right? Wow. Now, we talked about this, you and I talked about this early in the market, because it kind of smelled a bit bad to us anyway, even before coronavirus. And we discussed, how do we want to address this? And because we've gone for a start to finish model of absolute transparency, that's part of the simplicity of our model, not only keeping risk low, but making sure investors really understand how every cog connects to the next cog in this fund. We felt that we didn't need to paper over any cracks with these kinds of guarantees. And instead, what we'd rather do is make ourselves transparent and have investors that, investors are wising up over time anyway. People capture onto these things, especially once the house of cards has tumbled down once. And so we felt that it was a much more, can't think of the word I'm trying to find it, but a much stronger and more steady approach to build the stability and the guarantee into the actual strategy itself. Not only does it make perfect sense from A to Z anyway, not only is it built on the most static asset class anyway, but also because we have our rental income baked into contracts, that we do still have an element of contract, an element of legal enforceability, but at an actual operational level rather than a sort of abstracted level. So that's where we are on guarantees. And I bring it up because we have the conversation over and over again, and it's a sticky one, but we see a trend with investors getting wiser and wiser anyway, and realizing that they're not really worth the paper they're written on. But I just wanted to bring it up. I thought it'd be an interesting one.
Should we switch to questions?
Let's do questions. Yeah. So we see a bunch stored up. Thank you so much, guys, for putting these on here. And for anyone else who thinks of things as we're going, please do dump them on.
So let me take the agriculture one. So Anonymous.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I realized I need to get my power cable.
Anonymous asks, what kind of agriculture crop types are you planning on being involved with? So most of our operating partners will be growing almonds. However, this is part of it. In between the rows of almond trees, cover crops are going to be a very important part of the system. Along the edges of the farm, making sure that we have pollinators and some wildland is also a key part of it. But right now, the majority of the crops we plan on growing will be almond focused.
Okay, cool. And that just to add on to that as well, we work with what defines the groups that we're happy to work with and actually excited to work with is their move towards sustainable approaches, right? So we touched on this with the cover crops, but there's no limitation from our side in terms of which crops do or don't work within our strategy. Right?
Sure.
It's all about the stability and the scale of the operation we're working with.
Right.
So we see increasing numbers of kiwi growers, blueberry growers, citrus fruits is a really big deal now here. So nuts too. So
it's fundamentally making sure we have the right partner,
exactly,
the right scale,
the intention. But it's great for us to diversify across different crops too. So some of these questions are coming in anonymous, so I'm afraid I can't address by name. But let's see. How are we managing expectations around climate fluctuations over the next few decades in regards to the fund? So Erica, thanks so much for that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so our fund is 7 years in lifespan, right? So in terms of climate changes over the lifespan of the fund, in 7 years probably won't be wild, but it's a thing that we talk about in terms of going back to our why, really, because soil is the greatest terrestrial carbon sink on the earth, and a big part of the reason why we fundamentally believe that agriculture needs to change to being net negative, which it sort of would be if we weren't tinkering too much anyway. Right. So we feel that the fund is very much, factually speaking, the fund is very much targeting carbon net neutrality achievements. The EU here is trying to reduce by 55% by 2030 and to be completely net neutral by 2050, if I'm getting my stats right. And we're receiving a certain amount of support from people working in that department of the European Development Bank anyway, because they're loving people boosting soil health and things. So
let me touch on soil health real quick, because I always geek out on this.
Yeah.
So not only does healthy soil, and to define healthy soil, it has microbiotic, I can never say it right. Flora and fauna is rich, but there's in having healthy soil, you're absorbing significantly more carbon, you're absorbing significantly more water. But an interesting thing that a lot of people overlook is you're growing more nutritious food. So there's a whole movement around food as medicine. You guys should dig into it, but that's part of our thinking.
Cool. So I want to bring this back to Erica's question to make sure we didn't deviate too far from it. But there's a big difference between the north and south of Portugal in terms of climate. In the south of the country, we're already seeing a lot of desertification. And in the north of the country is not only are there more hills, we've got more altitude, but also it's a long way further north and they have way more rainfall up there. So negative effects of climate change are really biting in the south of Portugal already and really not at all biting in the north of Portugal. In fact, if anything, the wine there is getting better. So how can we manage expectations? We have to balance heart against head on this one because we want to be making a difference to pushing back desertification, re-enriching what used to be healthy soils that are now becoming desertified. We have to not go too close to the soil that's already kind of ruined, right? We need to buy and work farms that are in safe zones of Portugal. And that's a big area of focus for us, is not only historic rainfall, but projected rainfall in different areas. It's a thing that we have both eyes squarely on, is making sure that we're working with operators and working with land that we know is going to perform well, not only for the duration of the fund, but long after. And I think both of us going forward beyond the span of this particular fund would like to work in more and more areas of the world where the soil is already really degraded, because fundamentally that's the reason we're in this line of work. So it's a big question, Erica. It's a great question, but I hope that's given you something to work with on that.
Just to touch on your water question, in focusing on soil health, this allows greater water absorption. And so in a lot of these areas, there's heavy rainfalls at certain periods of time. But with degraded soils, all the water runs off. So soil health is key for that, but also technology. There's a lot of technology going into micro drip. So Erica, water is definitely front of mind, and one of the key metrics we're looking to improve.
Great stuff. What percentage of the target fund has been achieved to date? So our fund received its regulation and approval from the CMVM, which is the Portuguese SEC.
Yeah,
you guys call it?
Yeah.
SEC. They gave us our magic stamp in April. We started fundraising in earnest at the end of April, start of May, and we've got to date 4 through the door already, and about 10, 11 coming close to coming, following them down the track. Yeah, exactly. So what percentage does that work? Quick math. So yeah. So we're, I don't know, pushing 20%, let's say. Yeah. So we're moving nicely, which is really exciting. Okay. If we talk about funds, what's the percentage of return per annum and how secure is it? So how secure is it? I feel like we kind of went into that in terms of the rental income coming in through our contract. So extremely is the answer I'm going to go with.
All with land as an underlying asset.
So completely asset backed by farmland, super secure, etc. But fundamentally, investor annual dividends are coming back every year from the rent that's paid by the tenants. That's how the money flows through the fund and back to you guys. So come the end of the fund, not only will you receive your initial investment back, we're also targeting that 5% return for every year you've been in the fund, and also a 14% uplift, which is a bonus at the end of the fund, which comes when we liquidate the assets and the asset appreciation, the value appreciation over time, which actually we project to be notably more than 14%, but we've gone for a conservative 2% because we want to make sure we hit the numbers that we say. So 5% per year coming from rent, 2% per year coming from asset appreciation.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. Which fund do you recommend? Well, we recommend our fund, Pela Terra Farmland. I understand that Armand is thirsty. Will there be sufficient water available if there's a significant increase in demand? Great question from Robert. You take this one.
Yeah, this water is often the most cited thing about almonds. The area in which we buy land is an estate of Portugal called Alentejo, and we focus on a region that's near Lake Alpueva. That's the largest man-made lake in Europe, and this gives us reliable water over the period of our fund. So compared to California, I don't know if anyone's, Erica's from California, Portugal has much more water security than places like that. So
we also have a much higher water table, so a lot of water comes out of wells on site, and also being organic, the ground holds a lot more water when the rain falls. So we're in a good position in terms of rain. So actually some people asking questions in the chat too, so let's have a look here. Is the fund structured as a VC? So short answer, yes. Technical answer is that they don't have exactly what we would call a VC structure here in Portugal. They have something which sits kind of in between private equity and VC. It's called, and here comes the Portuguese accent, Fundo Capital Risco, which means which means a capital fund at risk. It essentially means an investment fund where you're obliged to invest the money. That's essentially what it is. So short answer, yeah, it's basically a VC. How are our options for exiting the fund after, for example, 5 years? Thanks, Nick. Oh, okay, thanks, Nick. Great question. So the fund is completely set up and designed for golden visa investors. So every decision has been made around the optimum way to be a golden visa investor in this fund. Now, on paper, they'll tell you that you can get a golden visa in 5 years, because that's the amount of time that your investment needs to have been invested.
The minimum amount.
That's the minimum amount of time. So you have to have had your money invested for 5 years. Reality check is that you only get to start that clock after about 6 months bureaucracy of faffing around. So we had the 6 to 8 weeks that I mentioned before, when you get that stamp that says, okay, you've officially applied. From there, we have about a 4-month delay of various bureaucratic processes until they say, okay, here's your golden visa. Now that's when your 5-year clock starts. So at the end of your 5 years, your round numbers 5.5 years in, and then you get to apply for your passport. Now that takes another 6 to 9 months. So when you wrap all of that up, you're at about 6 years worth of activity. And that's why our fund is 7 years, because we wanted to wrap it around the outer edges of that process and make sure that every investor has passport in hand by the time we close. And there is, I'm not going to go into loads of detail here, but there is a mechanism at the end for anyone who got delayed, there's no chance that we would shut the fund before people had passport in hand, just to be clear about that. Sorry, just make sure I've answered Nick's question. Your options for exiting after 5 years, you can, if you wanted to, but after 5 years, frankly, you won't have completed your citizenship process. Probably more likely you would be at 6 years by the time you completed your citizenship process. So Nick, if you want to get in touch, and I don't know what the thinking behind the question is, but if you want to get in touch and dig into some details, obviously you're very, very welcome, but I hope that's answered. Great, thanks Nick. Okay.
So we're, I want to be very sensitive on everyone's time. Should we take one more and then wrap things up, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're not rushing, so let's do one or two more, and folks, you know, obviously people can drop off as they like, but we've got questions coming in, so I'm having fun.
All right, good.
Okay, what's the process to qualify the land as organic? How long does it take? What's the risk that the land does not qualify organic? Are we relying on the tenant for part of this process? Great question from Alexander. So the process to qualify the land as organic is, Alex, I don't know if you're asking this from the UK or the US or a different country, but it's stricter than it is in the US, right?
A little bit. It's a little more bureaucratic. But I'll jump in on this one.
All right.
So it's a 3-year-long process to get certification, and it's really around what you're doing as a farmer. And are you growing hay to graze, or are you growing almonds? And so there can be complexity that changes depending on what activity you're doing. This is ultimately responsibility of the farmer, but we work hand in hand because it's part of our mission. It's very important.
Great. USA, Alex. Good to hear. USA. Okay, let's see. I think we're getting to the end here, guys. I hope we haven't missed anyone. Maybe I've missed one or two, but I hope not.
So while Alex is looking through the questions, one thing I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if you can tell, but we love talking about this. It's something that we're very passionate about. That's why we do this. And we would love to talk to you about our fund, what the change we're making here. And we'd love for you to reach out.
Indeed.
What are some different ways that people can reach us?
So probably the simplest is email. Let's put some emails in the chat here.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Our website is pelaterra.com. PELATERRA. You can read a bit more about what we're doing. You can also reach out to us through email, and
email is probably simplest, and then we spend a lot of time on Zoom and on the phone to folks from all around the world, and we're, as Nathan said, we're very passionate about the project. Everybody's getting very excited about it on the ground here in Portugal. It's causing quite the groundswell. So it's the train's really rolling forward now, and it's a great time to be involved. So we hope that lots of you will get in touch, and we can get to know you more personally.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your time with us.
Yes,
this was
very much. Really
certainly a pleasure, and hope to. They said it doesn't show up in chat.
Oh. Okay, well, we have all of your email addresses, so we're going to make sure that we follow up with emails. We'll be in touch with all of you over the next 24 hours. For sure.
Info@pelaterra.com is probably the easiest way to reach us. Anyways, thank you, everyone.
That's that.
Bye.
Guys, thank you so much.